Hey guys, tonight we're going way back. Like so far back, Netflix still delivered DVDs and Olympus was the original reality show. You're not in your bedroom anymore. Nope. You're drifting through soft golden clouds, barely lit by a sun that never really clocks out. And right there, reclining on a particularly fluffy one, is Apollo, sun god, music nerd, and current cowherder. He's got one hand strumming his lyre like a bored teenager waiting for dinner, the other lazily twirling a piece of grass between his immortal fingers. You catch the faint scent of olive oil and existential boredom. Welcome to the most gloriously uneventful Tuesday Olympus has ever seen. And trust me, you wouldn't survive a week here without falling asleep out of sheer boredom. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Comment below where and when you're listening from. It's always a weird joy seeing someone say 3 a.m. doing dishes in Iowa. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stumble over a cloud, yes, they're strangely solid up here, and sit down beside Apollo, who hasn't even noticed. His eyes are half-lidded, face stuck in a kind of divine ennui. You try not to stare at the glowing outline around his golden curls. He mumbles something that sounds like, "The cows are chewing in D-flat today." Yep, this is the god of light, truth, healing, and now apparently moo evaluation. You're not sure what you expected. Chariots of fire, arrows of justice? Nope. Apollo's latest obsession is a herd of cows that glow faintly under moonlight and have, according to him, a better sense of rhythm than mortals. You peer over the edge of the cloud. Far below, a peaceful meadow sprawls out, and yes, the cows are down there, chewing contentedly in synchrony. One even swishes its tail on beat like it's vibing to lo-fi beats for ancient study sessions. This one, Apollo says, pointing vaguely, chews on the downbeat. I think she might be a contralto. You nod slowly, not wanting to provoke. The only being who could start a forest fire with a sneeze. He sighs again, this time deep enough to make your entire cloud sink a little. Nothing ever happens anymore, he murmurs. The mortals are too busy inventing agriculture. Nobody's sacrificing goats with flair anymore. Hermes is probably off inventing socks. Again. That last part sounds made up. But who are you to argue? A gentle breeze rustles the edge of your cloud, and for a moment you think this might be your cue to leave. But then a glint appears on the horizon. Something fast, something winged, something chaotic. Apollo suddenly straightens up. Oh no, he says, it's him. Before you can ask who him is, a streak of wind and feathers rockets past, spinning your hair into a minor tornado. A faint giggle echoes behind it. The cows below look up. One moos in C major. Apollo buries his face in his hands. Hermes, he groans, of course. And just like that, your sleepy evening cloud watching with a bored sun god has turned into the prelude of a mythologically ridiculous saga. Because Hermes, god of messages, mischief, and making everything worse, is officially on the move. You squint into the sky, catching a glimpse of the toddler-shaped menace. That's right. Hermes is still basically a newborn. Swaddled toga, chubby cheeks, and the kind of grin that makes you check your pockets. He's wearing sandals with wings, because obviously he is, and trailing behind him like an excited puppy is a cloud of glitter that definitely wasn't authorized by Olympus Health and Safety. Brace yourself, Apollo mutters. He's probably here to, I don't know, sell me stars, or ask if cows can be upgraded. But what Hermes does next is even worse. He doesn't stop. He flies straight past you and straight down toward the cows. No, Apollo breathes. No. You look down. Hermes just landed, and in the blink of an eye, honestly blink slower, you'll miss it. He's untied 3 cows, slipped on a pair of oversized mortal sunglasses, and is now herding them off like a toddler pretending to play cowboy. Apollo leaps up so fast you nearly roll off your cloud. He's stealing my cows. You hesitate. Can't you just smite him or something? Apollo shoots you a look. You can't smite a baby. Even Zeus has rules. You watch in fascinated horror as Hermes disappears into the distance. The cows now adorned with garlands, and jangling jewelry that definitely wasn't there 5 minutes ago. One of them has a tiny tambourine tied to its tail. Apollo runs a hand through his hair like a high school drama lead in a teen soap. This is exactly why I shouldn't have taken a sabbatical from plague delivery. You clear your throat. So, what now? Apollo exhales sharply. Now we chase. Because if that little brat so much as tunes one of their moos, we're going to have the entire cosmos humming in off-key dissonance. You try to imagine what intergalactic cow-mooing chaos sounds like, and promptly decide it's not a lullaby. Apollo snaps his fingers. A sunbeam solidifies into a staircase. He doesn't even wait for you to climb. He's already striding downward, robes fluttering, lyre strapped to his back, like some kind of ancient bard turned cowboy. You follow him, of course. What else would you do? After all, you just witnessed the moment Greek mythology's first music festival was accidentally set in motion by a diaper-wearing kleptomaniac and 3 unusually rhythmic cows. And somehow you just know this is going to get weirder. But you're in too deep now. The gods are restless, the cows are funky. And Olympus? Well, Olympus is about to get loud. The sun stairs feel squishier than you'd expect, like walking on slightly warmed marshmallows, which is both pleasant and disconcerting. Apollo is moving ahead at a speed that suggests someone just insulted his Spotify playlist, and you're doing your best not to slip into the stratosphere. Far below, the landscape shifts. You can now see where Hermes is headed, across a river that definitely wasn't there 5 seconds ago, into a grove filled with oddly symmetrical trees and an uncomfortable number of squirrels watching the situation with judgmental little eyes. Apollo mutters, "I knew I shouldn't have named them." Makes it personal when they get kidnapped. You glance sideways. You named your cows? Obviously. That one with the tambourine tail is Euphomounia. The quiet one is Mozart. And the leader, well, that's Beyoncé. You don't laugh. Not because it isn't funny, just because he's dead serious. You finally reach solid ground, or at least land shaped vaguely like a lyre if you squint. Apollo pauses and picks up a hoofprint. Yes, he picks up a hoofprint. This is God stuff, don't question it. They went east, he says, holding the translucent imprint like a glass cookie. Probably to the caves. Of course, Hermes would pick somewhere acoustically pleasing. You're about to ask how he knows all this when the trees suddenly rustle in unison. A faint beat pulses through the ground, like someone dropped a bass line in the middle of a myth. "Oh no," Apollo says again. He's already rehearsing. You follow the sound, feet crunching over leaves that seem to be humming in harmonic minor. Birds hop along nearby branches, nodding rhythmically. Even the squirrels are tapping their acorns like makeshift maracas, and then you see it, a clearing lit by unnatural twilight even though it's mid-morning. The cows are there, each standing on a tree stump, swaying gently. One is wearing sunglasses. Hermes is center stage, conducting them with a stick he's clearly stolen from a blind prophet. "Welcome," Hermes says grandly, "to the debut of Hermes and the Herd." Apollo facepalms so hard the trees flinch. Hermes beams. "We've already got merch, check it out." He holds up a tiny cowbell that says, "Music is divine" in sparkly letters. You try not to laugh. You fail. Apollo storms forward. "Hermes, you can't just steal someone's livestock and turn them into a band." Hermes shrugs, not at all remorseful. "They seemed bored. I'm giving them purpose." One of the cows moos enthusiastically, which doesn't help Apollo's case. You step forward, thinking maybe you can de-escalate. "So, is this a rehearsal? Or like a spontaneous pop-up concert?" Hermes grins. "Both. It's a sacred sound experience, patent pending." Apollo is vibrating with frustration. Literally, his glow is starting to flicker like an angry stove burner. "Hermes," he growls, "you are 2 days old." "Technically 3, Hermes says, holding up 3 fingers, one of which is suspiciously sticky. "But who's counting?" You're about to suggest maybe a collaboration instead of divine litigation when suddenly Zeus appears, not with thunder, not with fanfare, just poof. Dad energy in a robe, beard slightly off-center, holding a cup of ambrosia that looks suspiciously like decaf. "Why?" Zeus says, blinking at the scene. "Is there a bass line coming from the forest?" Apollo and Hermes both freeze. "You do?" 2. The cows, however, keep swaying. Hermes raises a hand. Hi, Dad. Don't be mad, but I started a musical movement. Zeus closes his eyes. There is a long pause. This is why we don't give newborns access to dimensional portals, he mutters. Then he looks at Apollo. Can you just solve this without anyone getting turned into a pine cone? Apollo exhales. I could have handled this if he hadn't used my cows. Zeus rubs his temples. God's above you and your cows. Hermes pouts. They volunteered. Zeus raises an eyebrow. They what? And then, because of course, one of the cows speaks. It's not articulate. It's more like an ancient melody pushed through a bovine throat, but it's unmistakably language adjacent. The cow locks eyes with you and nods solemnly. I think she wants an encore, you whisper. Zeus stares into space for a long moment. I'm going back to bed, he announces, and poof, he's gone. There's a silence. Then Apollo turns slowly to Hermes. You enchanted my cows. Hermes shrugs. A little, just enough to unlock their inner groove. And what exactly was your end goal? Hermes spreads his arms. To create the first celestial music festival, duh. Apollo puts his hands on his hips. And what were you going to call it? Hermes pauses dramatically. Cowcella. You burst out laughing. Apollo sighs so hard a small breeze stirs your hair. We're going to have to fix this. You mean manage it, Hermes corrects, already pulling a scroll out of nowhere labeled set list. Because Mozart has a solo at sundown. Apollo groans. And just like that you realize you're in the middle of a divine custody battle and accidental band launch. And what's shaping up to be ancient Greece's weirdest weekend getaway. The worst part, you're starting to kind of enjoy it. You're not exactly sure how you ended up here, sitting cross-legged on a rock, surrounded by sentient cows in floral garlands and ancient instruments made from stuff you're pretty sure isn't FDA approved. Euphomounia just winked at you. Or maybe it was a blink. Hard to tell with cows. Apollo stands beside you, arms crossed, glaring at Hermes, who is currently instructing a goat on percussion technique. Left hoof, then right. Yes, just like that. You've got rhythm, my fuzzy. Friend, you glance at Apollo. He's really committed. He's really delusional, Apollo mutters. That goat's not even part of the band. You don't say anything, mostly because the goat just nailed a triplet rhythm and bowed politely. The meadow has been transformed. Glowing lanterns float midair, twinkling with golden script that spells out slogans like "Music heals the soul" and "No God, no vibe." There's even a merch booth manned by what appears to be a very confused satyr trying to hawk cow-themed tote bags. But here's the thing, the vibe? Immaculate. Mortals and minor deities alike have started showing up, drawn by the strange combination of divine harmony and barnyard bass. One of the muses is offering free interpretive dance. Dionysus just rolled in with a keg and a fruit hat. Even Hades sent flowers, and he's never RSVP'd before. I hate to admit it, you murmur to Apollo, but this is kind of working. Apollo groans. That's what scares me. This has the potential to become canon. Just then, Hermes steps up on a milk crate stage and taps the side of his flute like a microphone. The crowd hushes. Ladies, gentlemen, immortal beings of indeterminate gender and general chaos, thank you for joining us tonight at the very first Music Festival. Yes, he said it with 2 O's. There's applause, literal lightning applause. You glance up. Zeus is clapping from a cloud. Great, he's on board now. Our opening act, Hermes continues, is a heartfelt tribute to grass, wind, and the sacred art of gentle chewing. Please welcome the Cud Collective. The cows step forward. You brace for chaos, you expect mooing, maybe even interpretive tail flicks. Instead, what you get is harmony. It's not singing, not in the way humans do it, but it's something primal and peaceful. A low, layered hum mixed with the occasional melodic chime from the cowbell's Hermes, absolutely enchanted. It's beautiful in a way you didn't expect, like falling asleep in a sunbeam. Or the sound your brain makes when you finally finish your taxes. Apollo goes still. You turn to him. Okay, be honest, you're impressed. He doesn't answer. Instead, he slowly walks forward, removes his lyre from his back and joins the rhythm. A quiet gasp ripples through the crowd, as Apollo plays a few soft notes, light and glimmering, weaving through the bovine bass like honey in tea. You'd be lying if you said you didn't feel something stir in your chest. The next song is somehow a duet between Euphomounia and Apollo. It shouldn't work, but it does. The music winds through the trees over the river, up toward Olympus like it knows the way home. You swear even the stars start to pulse in time. You look over and see one of the fates knitting a scarf that spells out bop in Morse code, and just when it feels like nothing could make this moment stranger, Hermes begins rapping. Oh yes. He raps. It starts slow, confident, a beat set to divine mischief. Yo, I'm the god with the wings and the sass, stealing cows, writing laws, and I travel first class. Born in a cave, no time for a nap, day 2 of life, I drop my debut rap. Apollo stops playing mid-note. No, absolutely not. But the crowd loses it. Even Athena's owl does a little head bob. You lean over. Are you gonna stop him? Apollo sighs. At this point, stopping him would only give him power. The performance continues. It shouldn't work. But again, it does. You find yourself nodding along, clapping in rhythm. And maybe it's the music or the faint magical incense Hermes distributed without a permit. But for a moment, everything feels right. You glance back at the cows. They're perfectly in sync, tails flicking like conductors' batons. One cow locks eyes with you and gives a short, sharp moo, perfectly on beat. Okay, you admit, this might actually be the origin of music. Apollo wipes a hand down his face. And I'll never hear the end of it. Centuries from now, some bard will write a tragic opera based on this night, and no one will believe it started with enchanted livestock. You pat him on the shoulder. On the bright side, at least your cows are happy. He glances over at Beyoncé the cow, who is now crowd surfing on a group of nymphs. Are they? The song ends. There's silence. Then, a single moo. Slow, drawn out, majestic. The crowd erupts in cheers. Hermes bows, doffs his sunglasses and declares, "This was only part 1 of our Odyssey of Sound. Tomorrow, Mount Olympus unplugged." Apollo groans. You lean back watching the stars flicker above you, the night air vibrating with divine leftovers from the performance. And in that moment, you realize something. You're not just watching history. You're living inside a myth no one dares to tell seriously, and honestly, it's starting to feel like home. You wake up, if one can be said to wake up in a dreamlike divine plane, to the sound of bongos, made of actual bronze shields no less, being slapped with the kind of enthusiasm only Hermes can summon before breakfast. A banner flaps lazily in the breeze overhead. It reads, "Mount Olympus unplugged, no lightning, just vibes." You sit up groggy. Your pillow was a harp case. Someone, probably Dionysus, drew grapes on your face in permanent ambrosia ink. Euphomounia is lying beside you, chewing cud to the tempo of an invisible metronome. Across the field, Apollo paces like a dad at a middle school talent show. He's been awake since dawn. You know this because he made dawn. He's muttering to himself. Structure. There must be structure. This isn't music, it's divine karaoke night. The tempo's inconsistent. The cow solos are too long. The flute section is just birds now. You catch up with him as he's tuning his lyre. So, big plans today? He gives you a look like you've just asked if Zeus wears socks. The reputation of Olympus is at stake. If Hermes thinks I'll just sit by while he turns this into an annual event, he's sorely mistaken. I've composed a corrective overture. You glance at his scroll. It's labeled Symphony of Restoration in F Fures, for dignity and cows. Meanwhile, Hermes is on a nearby rock, giving a press conference to a group of naiads with crystal recording shells. Yes, the cows are unionized now, he says, nodding, sagely. Their demands include twice daily pasture breaks, equal hoof representation, and 1 hay bale per original composition. You're about to ask what kind of negotiation Hermes had to pull off, when a familiar voice interrupts. "Well," drawls a new arrival, "looks like you've all been busy." Athena steps into the clearing, owl on her shoulder, arms crossed. She's not mad, she's worse, she's interested. "Are we calling this art?" she asks. Apollo opens his mouth. Hermes beats him to it. "It's more than art, it's expression. It's cultural revitalization. It's divine bovine empowerment. Athena raises an eyebrow. It's a barnyard in eyeliner. You try to intervene. Actually, they're kind of good. Athena eyes you. You're part of this now. You nod meekly. Honorary roadie. Euphomounia picked me. She considers this. That's fair. Just then, the opening chords of rehearsal sound from the hill. You turn to see the cows taking their positions again, but now with improved instruments. Hermes appears to have fashioned stringed lyres out of moonbeam and recycled sandals. Mozart wears a tiny cape. Beyoncé has a microphone carved from a sacred pine cone. Hermes hops on stage again. Welcome to day 2 of the musical revolution. No gods were harmed in the making of this lineup yet. Apollo steps forward. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. You blink. Wait, is he joining? Hermes pauses. Define right. With theory, with tone, with tempo, with dignity. Hermes tilts his head. That sounds like a lot of rules. Apollo brandishes his lyre. That sounds like music. And before anyone can object, he launches into a solo so intricate, so layered, that the clouds momentarily spin in reverse. It's a blend of classical and cosmic. Birds harmonize mid-air. Trees lean closer. Your skin tingles like a warm breeze. Just learned how to hum. When he finishes, there's stunned silence. Even Hermes is slack-jawed. Then, very softly, Mozart plays 3 perfect notes in answer. It's on. What happens next can only be described as a divine jam battle. Apollo and Hermes trade riffs, themes, and rhythms like sparring poets. The cows join in, bassline, backing vocals. One even plays triangle with its tail. The crowd is spellbound. Athena starts slow clapping. Dionysus hands out commemorative figs. Even the owl bobs its head. And then it clicks. Apollo shifts his style, letting Hermes lead with playful improvisation, while he counters with structured harmony. The sound that emerges isn't just music, it's mythical. You glance around, a dryad wipes a tear, a satyr drops his pan flute in awe. And Zeus, yes, Zeus, is filming it all on a cloud-shaped camcorder, mumbling something about family content for divine TikTok. You lean back, letting the music wash over you. The rhythms are unfamiliar but comforting. Like lullabies from a universe where cows are sacred, toddlers run festivals, and chaos and order occasionally sit down for a duet. Eventually, the final note fades. It lingers in the air like a promise, soft, golden, glowing. Apollo bows slightly. Hermes bows deeper, then trips over a tambourine. The audience goes wild. You glance at Apollo. So how do you feel? He exhales slowly, nodding. Strangely, okay. Think it should happen again next year? He grimaces. Let's revisit that after a nap. Hermes claps you on the back. Congrats, roadie. You just witnessed the first ever peaceful artistic compromise in Olympus history. Don't get used to it. And you know what? You won't, because it's only day 2, and this myth is just warming up. The next morning, and by morning we mean soft glimmer of celestial light that happens when Apollo accidentally bumps the sundial in his sleep. You wake up with hay in your hair, the faint scent of ambrosia barbecue in the air, and a nymph braiding Euphomonia's tail nearby while humming a cow-themed ballad. You blink the sleep from your eyes and immediately hear it. The faint, unmistakable twang of a rehearsal gone rogue. You sit up, only to see Hermes halfway up, a tree shouting down at a group of very focused cows. I said 8 counts of modulate, then drop the beat. Apollo, standing nearby, is pinching the bridge of his nose. You sigh. It's too early for cow puns. Apollo doesn't look up. It's never too early for regret. You stretch, bones popping like divine bubble wrap. I thought yesterday was the grand finale. Apollo gestures toward the horizon. It was. And then Hermes discovered encores. You glance around. The festival grounds have expanded. There's now a juice bar shaped like a fig, an information booth run by a Cyclops with a lanyard, and somehow a stage crew made entirely of turtles, the slowest setup in the known universe. What's the occasion, you ask, still brushing hay out of your ear? Hermes has scheduled a historical reenactment, Apollo groans. He calls it Cattlecalypse Now, the theft that moved the world. You blink. He's reenacting his own crime? Complete with props, Apollo mutters. There's a fog machine, it moves. And sure enough, a dense mist begins to roll in from the woods. From within, you hear what might be a cow practicing Shakespeare, or possibly someone gargling oatmeal. Hard to tell. You watch as a full stage is unveiled, complete with cow-sized platforms, glowing footlights, and a backdrop of Mount Olympus painted in glitter and hope. It's aggressively homemade. Hermes bounds onto the scene, now wearing a toga bedazzled with tiny mirrors. "Welcome," he shouts, arms flung wide, "to the most accurate retelling of myth since someone rewrote the Odyssey as a beach musical. There's applause. You're not sure if it's sarcastic or sincere, possibly both. Tonight," Hermes continues, "we honor the most sacred moment in Greek myth, when I, a misunderstood infant genius, revolutionized music, stagecraft, and bovine representation, all in one majestic heist." Apollo raises a hand. "You mean when you stole my cows?" "Allegedly," Hermes chirps, "and turned their guts into musical strings." "Upcycled," Hermes corrects, beaming. Before you can ask how this is possibly legal in any pantheon, the reenactment begins. It's chaos. Delightful, moo-filled chaos. Scene 1. Hermes' birth. A fully grown adult plays baby Hermes by curling up in a giant egg and emerging covered in glitter. A narrator cow reads stage directions in moo speak. Scene 2. The Great Cow Heist. Euphomounia wears a black cape and sunglasses, sneaking across the stage while other cows hum Mission Impossible. Scene 3. Apollo's Rage, played by Apollo himself. He keeps ad-libbing lines like, "This is a clear violation of Olympian Code Section 9B, and I am not being dramatic, you are." Somewhere between scenes, you're handed a snack shaped like a miniature harp. It tastes like burnt sunlight and citrus guilt. The crowd, now triple in size, loves it. Even Ares shows up, clearly expecting a battle, but stays for the cow choreography. He mutters, "Respect," and slow claps after a particularly emotional moo monologue. Athena whispers beside you, "You know, this might end up in the official record." You blink. "The one carved in marble," she nods. Hermes already hired 3 muses and a guy named Kevin to draft a scroll. The final scene is a wild, borderline operatic musical number titled "Music is Justice." Hermes and Apollo perform it together, half as a truce, half as a competition. You're not entirely sure who wins. By the time the curtain falls, literally, a giant curtain made of stitched-together picnic blankets, the crowd is weeping, cheering, and in one case mooing in harmony. You turn to Apollo. "Well, how'd it feel playing yourself in a historically inaccurate reenactment of your worst week?" He gives a long, slow blink. "Oddly cathartic." Hermes bounds over. "Told you we needed to embrace the chaos." Apollo arches an eyebrow. "You cast a goat as Zeus." "It had range," Hermes says proudly. As the crowd disperses and the cows take well-earned bow-wows, wait, no, moose, you find a quiet corner to sit. You reflect on the past few days. It started with a nap on a cloud and a board god. Now you've lived through an accidental music revolution, bovine stardom, and the reinvention of myth as musical theater. And somewhere along the way you realize this is what the myths never told you. Not just the battles, not just the heroes, but the quiet weirdness, the divine boredom, the accidental beauty that happens when immortals get curious. You smile as Euphomounia walks past and nods her head like a jazz musician after a good solo. "Great show," you whisper. She moves in C major, and you know this is history now. There's something eerie about post-festival Olympus. Not the creepy kind, more like in that gentle hush after a storm when everyone's too tired to argue, and even the cows seem to be chewing slower. The fog machine wheezes its last puff somewhere near the merch booth. A broken lyre string lies tangled with a garland of laurels. The once roaring Music Festival banner now hangs sideways, gently flapping like a tired toga on laundry day. You sit on the edge of a cloud ledge with a cup of warm nectar, or possibly just hot cow milk, it's gotten hard to tell, watching the gods pack up their egos. Apollo sits cross-legged beside you, polishing his lyre with the focus of someone trying to regain custody of their artistic integrity. A cow with star-shaped sunglasses naps nearby. "I admit," he says finally, "it wasn't the worst thing I've ever been part of." "That's the spirit," you nod, sipping. "Progress." Still shouldn't have let Hermes direct. He gave Poseidon a cameo as a fog machine. You pause. "Wait, that was Poseidon?" Apollo winces. "We'll be dealing with that thunderstorm over Crete for weeks." He pauses again, this time longer. "I used to think music had to be perfect, ordered, beautiful in a very specific, divine kind of way." He gestures out to the field, where a pair of cows are slow dancing to their own chewing rhythm. "Turns out, maybe a little chaos helps." You smile. "Welcome to your jazz phase," Apollo chuckles. And that's when you hear it, again. The unmistakable sound of Hermes plotting. He's behind the information booth this time, surrounded by scrolls, celestial clipboards, and what looks suspiciously like branded merchandise. Next year, Hermes is saying to no one in particular, "We expand. 12 locations, one under the sea." And I'm thinking, Music Festival 2 Bovine Boogaloo. You lean toward Apollo. He's serious. He always is. That's the problem. Nearby, Athena is mediating a legal debate between Artemis and a nymph who claims her reeds were overused during the closing number. A satyr is doing inventory of leftover tambourines. One is labeled "Do Not Enchant." Hermes materializes beside you because personal space is more of a mortal concept. "Good news," he grins. "We got approved for a grant." You stare. "A grant?" He nods, waving a papyrus scroll with official-looking gold seals and questionable spelling. "From the Department of Divine Culture and Mischief, funded by Dionysus and, apparently, Hades. Not sure how he got involved, but he sent a cake." Apollo groans softly. "Of course he did. Nothing says cultural enrichment like dead-themed dessert." Hermes grins wider. "Which means, congrats, you're now the official coordinator of cow logistics and historical accuracy for Music Fest 2. You blink. "That's not a real title." Hermes shrugs. "It is now." You start to object, but Beyoncé the cow wanders over and gently headbutts you in approval. Which in divine terms is basically a signed contract. Apollo watches the interaction, amusement flickering across his face. "Are you going to fight it?" he asks. You shake your head. "No. I think I've stopped asking why a while ago, Amor." Breeze passes, lifting a few glittering leaves. Somewhere in the trees, a lone harp note rings out, soft, lingering. It might be someone practicing, or it might just be Olympus humming to itself. Hermes hops onto a nearby boulder, throwing his arms wide. "This was only the beginning," he declares to an audience of mostly sleeping cows and one confused turtle. "Next year, more stages, more genres, more udders." You glance at Apollo, still worried about your reputation. He smirks. "At this point, I think it's too late to salvage." And for the first time in a long time, Apollo doesn't sound annoyed about that. You look out at the horizon. It's glowing, not with dawn, but with potential, however absurd that potential may be. Because in a world of perfect myths and polished legends, maybe the weird ones stick the longest. The ones with funky cows, impromptu raps, and a sun god who just needed to chill for a minute. You lie back in the grass, the celestial air warm against your face. The clouds drift slow, the stars pulse gently, and somewhere nearby, a cow sings softly in her sleep. There's a certain quiet that only happens after mythological events wind down, a kind of divine hangover in the sky. No trumpet blasts, no thunder, just the gentle rustle of laurels being swept up, and the soft clinking of golden amphoras being restacked behind the fig-shaped juice bar. You wander through the empty festival grounds like a roadie after a rock tour, except your main bandmates chew cud and wear capes. Hermes is nowhere in sight. This is immediately suspicious. You find Apollo standing near the main stage, or what's left of it. The banner has been replaced by a scroll that reads, "Closed for divine renovation. Music returns 2049 BC. Apollo's holding a list, titled Post-Festival Reflections and Regrets. There are a lot of bullet points. Number 4 just says, "No rap interludes in sacred chants." You peer over his shoulder. "You're still thinking about it?" Apollo nods. It's hard not to. I've spent millennia sculpting music like marble, refined, flawless, deeply divine. And then, this happens. You gesture at the trampled grass, the scattered lyres, a cow lounging in what used to be Dionysus's wine fountain. Yeah, this happened. I let mortals and livestock take the lead, he mutters. Do you know how un-Olympian that is? You. Think for a second. Well, but the last time mortals took the lead, we got democracy and plumbing. Apollo frowns. Fair, still I think I need a reset. Before you can ask what that means, a flash of feathers swoops down. Hermes, of course, landing with the energy of a kid who just learned how to juggle fire and really wants to show someone. Good news, he announces. We've been nominated for a Pan-Olympian Performance Award. Apollo blinks. That's not a thing. It is now, Hermes beams. Category, Best Use of Ruminants in a Musical. You rub your eyes. Did you make up an entire award system overnight? Hermes winks. With 3 judges, 2 bribes, and 1 questionable prophecy, anything's possible. Apollo sighs the way only an ancient sun deity can, like wind over a burning field. Hermes continues, unbothered. Also, Mozart dropped a solo album. You blink. The Cow, self-titled, conceptual, entirely in minor key moves. The critics are confused but intrigued. Apollo leans against a pillar. Let me guess. Vinyl only, Hermes gasps. Apollo, how dare you? It's only available on celestial wax cylinder. Limited edition. You suppress a laugh. Barely. Then, from behind the juice bar, you hear a familiar rhythm. Hoof taps on hollow logs. Euphomunia emerges with a fresh garland and an expression that somehow radiates both serenity and diva energy. She's followed by the rest of the band, forming a casual semicircle. No fanfare, no fog machine, just cows and music. Not flashy, not divine thunder, just soft rhythmic breathing, gentle bell tones, a low hum vibrating through the ground like the earth itself exhaling. Apollo's brows lift. Hermes tilts his head. Unscheduled jam. You sit down without thinking, folding your legs under you as the sound curls around your chest like a blanket. Apollo lowers his lyre, listens. His fingers twitch, then he joins in. No speech, no eye contact, just a sun god finding the pulse of the moment and following it. Gentle, curious, open. The melody that emerges is warm, not perfect, not symmetrical, but somehow right. The cows, playback, harmonizing. One clinks a little percussion bell with her tail. Mozart adds a tremolo, and then you realize you're not watching performers anymore. You're witnessing collaborators, artists, strange ones, sure, covered in fur and divine ego, but still artists. Apollo looks up at you briefly, and in that glance something shifts. He smiles. Not the cocky sunburst grin of a god, but something more tired, more human. You know, he murmurs, I never thought I'd say this, but I think I needed this. Even the rap battle, he winces. Let's not push it. You all fall into silence again, letting the melody rise and settle like soft waves. Somewhere in the distance you hear a cow moo in the perfect key of G. Hermes whispers, that's the bonus track. You don't move, don't speak. The air is still. The gods are quiet, and for just a moment everything, the myths, the madness, the music feels balanced, as if the universe remembered its own rhythm. You would think a divine music festival involving cows, gods, and spontaneous jazz solos would burn out in a blaze of chaotic glory. But no, it settles, like a campfire after the singing stops, still warm, still glowing, but quieter, softer, more intimate. The scene now? Think less Olympian Coachella and more celestial coffeehouse open mic night hosted by sentient livestock. You sit cross-legged near the edge of the meadow-turned stage, sipping something warm. Hermes insists is a chai-syruped ambrosia, a latte, though you're pretty sure it's just frothed goat milk with confidence. Apollo, now dressed in a slightly wrinkled tunic and sporting a headband made of daisies, courtesy of a bored nymph, is lounging nearby, absent-mindedly plucking at his lyre. There's no set list today. No script, No fog machine mooing in the background. Just whoever wants to play, plays. And weirdly, it works. A cow gently taps a slow rhythm with her hoof. A dryad plays wind chimes strung from her own hair. Hermes accompanies on a pan flute he borrowed permanently from a satyr. Even Hades, who stopped by just to complain about the noise, ended up doing a spoken word poem about underworld parking policies. It killed, metaphorically. You glance around. The crowd is smaller now. The main gods have drifted off, back to their temples and their thrones and their endless cosmic tasks. What remains are the curious ones, the misfits, the muses who didn't make the first cut, the forgotten nymphs, a half-blind oracle knitting in the corner, a mortal girl sketching everything in a dusty journal. And you, the accidental roadie to a myth that never should have worked, and yet somehow sings. You realize, Hermes says, settling beside you with a scroll in hand, this was never supposed to happen. You nod. Yeah, I kind of figured that out somewhere between the jazz cow solo and the interpretive fog dance. Hermes grins. I mean, the fates had this week pegged for 3 minor battles, 1 betrayal, and a plague outbreak in Thessaly. But I stole a thread or two, rerouted the whole arc. You stare at him. You edited the fates scrolls, he winks. Just a few footnotes, small stuff. Nobody notices when the cows start singing. You're about to reply when you hear a soft melody float in from the left. You turn to see Apollo, still lounging, but now playing something gentle, not structured, not divine decree, just exploring. It's like watching the sun learn to whisper. Hermes sighs contentedly. See, I knew he had it in him. You glance at him sideways. So this was your plan all along? Oh no, he says. I was just bored. The plan made itself. You don't know whether to be impressed or horrified. Maybe both. A quiet applause follows the tune, not clapping, more like hooves tapping, wind rustling leaves, the kind of applause nature gives when it's not trying to be noticed. Then, slowly, a cow walks up. Beyoncé, still wearing her sunglasses. She stands beside Apollo and with a surprising amount of presence, moos in a low, deliberate note. Apollo looks up. Their eyes meet, and without a word, they begin to play together. One note, one moo, then another. You feel it ripple out. Not a performance, not a spectacle, but a conversation. And it's beautiful. You think they'll remember this? You ask quietly. Hermes stretches out. Who? The mortals? Yeah. Or maybe the historians? He shrugs. Maybe not in scrolls, maybe not with names, but in lullabies, in rhythms they can't explain, in music that hits a little too deep, for no reason at all. He pauses, tapping his flute. Oh yeah, this moment's going to echo. You sit in silence, letting it happen, letting the music breathe. No flashy solos, no thunder. Just a god, a cow, and a tune that feels like the inside of a memory you didn't know you had. You glance up. The stars are brighter now. Closer, maybe. Or maybe you're just quieter inside. Someone whispers a joke behind you about starting a record label called Hoofbeats Eternal. You smile. You lean back in the grass, let your eyes drift shut. You're not worried anymore about what happens next. Because somehow, in the most unexpected way, this myth found a melody, not carved in stone, but humming, gentle, persistent, and somehow deeply true. The sky hangs low tonight, like it's listening. You lie on your back in the grass, watching stars blink in time with the soft, pulsing rhythms coming from the clearing. There's no stage anymore, no barriers between performers and audience. Just circles of people, gods, creatures, cows, and maybe one suspiciously musical raccoon sharing sound, the way mortals share stories around a fire. You shift slightly, careful not to spill the small cup of whatever it is Dionysus handed you. Earlier, it smells like lavender and bold decisions. You take a cautious sip and instantly forget the names of 3 minor gods. Worth it. Near the center, Apollo is humming. It's not performative. It's not meant for worship. It's just a tune, simple, human. He leans against a sleeping Euphomu Naya, who occasionally harmonizes mid-chew. The two of them have become an accidental musical duo, like Simon and Garfunkel but Moo. Hermes has already printed posters. Speaking of Hermes, he's been shockingly quiet for almost 10 minutes. This, of course, sets off immediate alarms. You scan the tree line and find him crouched in the shadows, whispering to a group of satyrs and one very nervous centaur, all huddled around a giant scroll. You approach cautiously. "What?" you ask slowly. "Is happening?" Hermes looks up with the grin of someone who just bought fireworks and definitely didn't read the safety instructions. "Just planning a little something for tomorrow." "Something," you repeat. "A closing ceremony," he says cheerfully. "Musical parade, sky lanterns, giant inflatable lyre, possibly fireworks in the shape of cows. Maybe a flying stage." You blink. "Where are you getting all this?" He leans in. "I took out a divine microloan. You..." Back away slowly. "Of course you did." You return to your seat before your sanity gets collateralized. The music in the clearing shifts again, this time to something older. You don't recognize the melody, but it feels like it's always been playing somewhere in some distant field or temple or cave, where mortals hum to themselves while carving names into the world. A cow with a harp strapped to her back walks past you like that's a normal Tuesday thing. You nod respectfully. She nods back. You're not entirely sure who's more in charge anymore. Apollo wanders over, dropping beside you with the grace of someone who hasn't had to worry about back pain since the Bronze Age. He watches the makeshift concert silently for a while. Then softly, "You know, I used to think music was the tool of gods, that we gave it to mortals as a gift, a way to lift them up." He gestures to the clearing, where a nymph and a cyclops are attempting a duet involving wind chimes and a massive tuba made from a hollowed-out tree. "But maybe," he continues, "it was never ours to give. Maybe music just is. And we're all just lucky enough to borrow it now and then." You nod. "That sounds suspiciously wise." He smirks. "Don't tell Zeus, he'll try to trademark it." A long pause settles in, peaceful, honest. Then Apollo tilts his head. You know I never asked, how did you end up here?" You blink. "I honestly don't remember. I think I followed a sound." He raises an eyebrow. You shrug. "Could have been mooing. Could have been fate." He laughs, a real, sun-warm laugh that makes the stars shimmer. "I'm glad you did," he says. "And for the first time you realize so are you. You came here chasing nothing. Now you're part of a myth that will never be sung in temples, never etched in marble, but will echo in dreams, lullabies, and weirdly catchy cow-based melodies passed down for generations." Hermes suddenly zooms past, chased by an angry goat, holding a clipboard. "The permit was implied," he yells. You and Apollo exchange a glance. "Should we?" you ask. "Nope," Apollo says, leaning back. "Let him run." You exhale. The stars flicker, and the music plays on. Soft, strange, eternal. You wake up to the smell of roasted ambrosia nuts and the distant sound of someone aggressively tuning a lyre. Again. Your makeshift bed, a bundle of hay, one of Musat's spare capes, and possibly a discarded prophecy, is surprisingly comfortable. You stretch, blink the dreams out of your eyes, and immediately duck as a paper lantern floats by with the phrase "Music ends, Myth begins" scrawled across it in glitter ink. The closing ceremony is clearly underway. It's chaos. Not the run for your life kind. More the a satyr juggling bagpipes while riding a unicycle made of vines kind. A celestial stage now floats 10 feet off the ground, wobbling gently. Hermes is zipping around on winged roller skates, throwing confetti and existential questions in equal measure. Are we art or just exceptionally well-lit livestock? Discuss. You glance at Apollo, who is standing at the center of it all, silent and glowing faintly, like someone who's finally stopped arguing with the sun. He's not holding his lyre. Instead, he's holding a small bell, one of the cow-crafted instruments made of brass and humility. He rings it once, the meadow stills, the satyrs freeze, the cows stop chewing. Even the music seems to pause mid-air. Apollo clears his throat. "Before we close this, whatever this was, cultural breakthrough," Hermes calls. "I'd like to say something." You sit forward. Apollo looks out across the crowd, taking in the faces. Gods, mortals, woodland creatures, and one turtle with a backstage pass. "I came here expecting boredom, silence, the usual divine tedium. I did not expect a musical uprising. I did not expect to form a duet with a cow. I definitely did not expect Hermes to organize a festival or for Zeus to live stream it. There's soft laughter, Apollo continues, voice quieter. But I'm glad it happened. He looks toward Euphomounia, who's wearing a laurel wreath and blinking slowly, as if trying to decide whether to moo or weep. I think I forgot, he says, what music is for. Not for worship, not for perfection, but for belonging, for moments like this. A soft breeze drifts through the crowd. Someone sighs, then Hermes launches a massive, completely unauthorized fireworks display. Exploding constellations light up. The sky, a lyre, a cow, Hermes breakdancing on a moon. The last one says, "Thank Mu for the music," in sparkling letters. Apollo covers his face with one hand. You lean over. Still glad it happened. Mostly. The music resumes gentle now. One final lullaby played not for applause but as a farewell. The kind that sticks to your ribs like warm soup or the chorus of a song you didn't realize you knew. Cows. Nymphs sway. Even Athena taps her foot. You close your eyes. And then, softly, almost imperceptibly, Apollo begins to sing. It's not flashy, not divine, just a single note, rising like steam, floating out across the meadow, wrapping the festival in something heavier than sound and lighter than air. Memory. One by one, voices join, not to match him, but to meet him, to meet each other. It becomes a sound you can't describe, a not quite symphony, a not quite ending, a moment too fragile for myth and too real for legend, and just like that, it's over. The floating stage settles to the ground. The instruments fall silent. Hermes throws one last handful of glitter into the wind, which spells out the end before scattering into stardust. Apollo bows, not dramatically, just enough, and then he walks away toward the rising sun, hands empty. The crowd disperses slowly, like a dream remembered in pieces. You stay seated. The grass is still warm. You're not sure what comes next, but you do know this. You were part of something impossible, and somehow it felt like home. It's the morning after, not the kind with headaches and questionable decisions, though Hermes is face down in a fruit basket, and one of the cows has a tattoo that says moo or never, but the kind of morning that hums softly, where the sky is brushed with pale gold. The dew clings to everything like a fond memory, and the breeze smells faintly of applause and roasted almonds. You wander through the now quiet meadow. The stage is gone. The booths are dismantled. Only footprints and hoofprints remain, stamped like punctuation across the grass. Euphomounia watches you pass, munching on leftover laurel wreaths. She looks at peace. She also has glitter in her eyelashes, which is surprisingly regal. You find Apollo down by the river. He's skipping stones, perfectly, of course. Each one sings a different note when it hits the water. It's like he's composing a farewell in ripples. You sit beside him. He nods at the river. Do you hear it? You listen. Not the stones, but something deeper, fainter, like the land itself. Humming? I think the earth liked the music, he says. You look around. The trees are still. The clouds above drift lazily. The river murmurs its ancient language. It wasn't what I planned, Apollo continues, flicking another stone. Wasn't what anyone planned, but it's in the world now, part of it. You smile. You're saying the myth, I'm stuck. He nods. Myths don't need temples, just echo. You both sit in silence for a while. Not awkward, just full. You look up. So what now? Back to lightning bolts and sacred duties? Apollo sighs, then chuckles. Eventually, but not yet. He points downstream, where a group of cows are slowly floating past on a log raft, playing makeshift flutes and harmonizing like they're sailing off to start a jazz commune. Hermes pops out of a bush behind you, wearing sunglasses and holding a scroll labeled Music Fest World Tour. Bad news, he says. We've been booked in Sparta. The cows have demands, also they unionized again, you blink. Again? New contract, he grins. More hay, less smiting. Apollo doesn't even flinch. Fine, but I'm not wearing the disco toga again. Hermes raises an eyebrow. Even if we do the underworld lounge session, especially if we do the underworld lounge session, you all laugh. It's a soft laugh, the kind that bubbles up from somewhere between joy and disbelief. You realize something as you sit there. There was never a grand finale, no big ending, just music trailing off into memory. A melody still drifting. Hermes disappears again, because of course he does, probably to start negotiating amphitheater rights with Poseidon. Apollo stands. You follow him as he walks uphill back toward Olympus, or maybe toward breakfast. Behind you the cows begin to sing again. You don't look back, you don't need to, because now the music is part of you. The path back up to Olympus is surprisingly quiet. Not solemn, just full. Like a backstage hallway after a standing ovation, where the echoes still bounce off the walls, not quite ready to leave. You walk beside Apollo, feet brushing golden dust. From the ground, the rhythm of your steps oddly in sync. No one's rushing. There's no schedule now, no divine battle or solar chariot waiting. Just space, and the knowledge that something happened. Something no one saw coming. Not even the gods. Apollo speaks without looking at you. You know the funny thing. You glance at him. There's been a lot of funny things. He smiles faintly. Before this, I didn't believe music could surprise me anymore. You raise an eyebrow. Even after Hermes stole your cows, he huffs, especially after that. You walk a bit farther. The sun rises gently above the mountains, not because Apollo commands it, but because it wants. Do you notice now how the world has shifted? Just a little. Olive trees sway with more rhythm. Birds chirp in scales. Even the wind feels like it's humming a tune it picked up at the festival. You pass a group of naiads gathering reeds by the stream. They pause, look at you, then begin playing a simple tune together, low and hesitant, like testing out a memory. Apollo stops, listens, nods once. They smile shyly. You whisper, "You're becoming a muse." He shudders dramatically. "Don't curse me." But you see the twinkle in his eyes. Up ahead, Hermes is waiting, leaning casually on a signpost that says, "Divine Rest Area, sponsored by Mozart Studios." He's holding a map that's been folded exactly wrong and a parchment coffee cup. That reads, "Don't talk to me until I've rewritten the laws of rhythm." "Good news," he shouts, waving you over. "We've been offered a residency." Apollo groans. "Where?" "Delphi," Hermes grins. "They've turned the old temple into a venue. Very retro, great acoustics. And the Oracle is already selling tickets." You blink. "Tickets?" Hermes pulls a tiny scroll from his pocket. "General admission, VIP Ambrosia passes, and the Golden Cow tier includes backstage salt licks." Apollo mutters, "I can't believe I'm hearing this." "You can believe it," Hermes grins. "Because this myth, it's sticky. It's music to mortal ears. And once a story starts singing, it doesn't shut up." You glance at Apollo. He's not wrong. Hermes tosses a glittery flyer at you. "Think of it this way. We've gone from divine punishment to summer tour. That's growth." Apollo sighs again, but it's softer now. The kind of sigh that happens right before someone gives in. "You do realize," he says, "if we go on tour, we have to rehearse." Hermes gasps. "Rehearse? Like, on purpose?" You all laugh, because it's ridiculous, but not impossible. Nothing is anymore. A rustle behind you. Euphemia approaches, cowbell jangling slightly. She moves once, nods toward the path. "She's ready," you say. Apollo glances at her. "She always was." You continue walking, past the rest area, past the place where Olympus starts to rise again in cloud and light. But this time, you're not just a guest, you're part of the band. Hermes hums a tune, something new, but familiar. Apollo joins, and then you do too. Not because you know the song, but because it knows you. Olympus has never been so quiet. Not the eerie silence of storms waiting to happen, or the sacred hush of a temple mid-prayer. No, this silence is different. It's content. Like the mountain itself is full from a feast it didn't expect to. Love. You and Apollo arrive at the edge of the divine court. The marble steps still shimmering with a faint afterglow, the air thick with the perfume of crushed laurels and storytelling. The other gods are already there, not gathered in grandeur, but lounging, like a family the morning after a wedding reception. Ares has traded his armor for a toga that says, "Fight me gently." Artemis is teaching a deer how to play the tambourine. Even Hestia, goddess of the hearth, is humming softly while stoking an enchanted bonfire that occasionally sings in perfect pitch. Zeus is perched on his throne, a half-eaten pomegranate in one hand, looking unusually amused. "So," he says, "I take it the cows have returned musically improved?" Hermes pops into existence mid-cartwheel. "And unionized." Zeus chuckles. "Of course they have." You step into the center, where once declarations were made, punishments handed down, laws carved in lightning. Now, there's a chalk drawing of Musat with sunglasses and a crown. Apollo clears his throat. All eyes turn to him. He raises his hand, not in command, but in invitation. "I have something to share." You glance at Hermes. He mouths, "Oh no." "But..." He's smiling. Apollo gestures, and the floor between you all glows gently. A sound begins, not loud, not dramatic. Just a few notes. Familiar, it's the cow song, the very first one. But this time it's layered, reimagined. The tune bends and stretches as each god adds their own flavor. Poseidon with a rumbling harmony, Athena plucking rhythm on a harp of silver threads, Dionysus chiming in with a hiccuping wineglass xylophone, and then you. You don't mean to. You just hum quietly, tentatively. But the sound wraps itself into the others, like it's always had a place waiting. You feel the music settle into your bones, not demanding, just being. It ends with a single low moo from Beyoncé, perfectly timed. Silence. Again, then soft applause. Not forced, not required. Just the sound of gods, legends, and chaos incarnate acknowledging, "Yeah, that was good." Zeus claps once. "Fine," he says, "you can keep the cows." Apollo bows slightly. "I wasn't asking." Hermes throws an arm around your shoulder. "So, coordinator of cow logistics and musical mythification, what's next?" You hesitate, because really, where do you go after this? But then you look around. The tired smiles, the softened eyes, the divine chorus still lingering on the marble steps like echo smoke. And you realize, you don't have to go anywhere. You've already arrived. This was never about where you ended. It was about the music you made on the way there. You pat Hermes on the back. "Next, I think we rest, we remember, and maybe we rehearse." He gasps. "Twice a week?" You shrug. "Depends on the cows." From the corner, Euphormunia gives a short approving snort. The gods laugh, the hearth hums, and somewhere deep beneath Olympus, the earth starts to carry the tune forward, low and ancient and soft, the kind of sound that never quite leaves. Evening falls on Olympus like a soft curtain, the sky turning the color of ripe figs and candle wax. Shadows stretch long over the marble steps, where the last notes of the divine jam session still linger like perfume. No one's rushing to leave. There's no next ritual, no bolt to throw, no war to start. For once, the gods are just loitering. Apollo leans against a sunbeam, sipping something golden and glowing from a goblet shaped like a lyre. His usual intensity has settled into something slower, quieter, less god of music and more guy who just discovered lo-fi playlists. You sit beside him, watching the horizon. A single cowbell rings in the distance. Mozart probably doing sound checks alone, artistic types. "I've been thinking," Apollo says, tapping the rim of his cup like it's a metronome. "Maybe it wasn't chaos after all." You raise an eyebrow. "What wasn't?" "This whole thing," he says. "The festival, the cows, the music, Hermes." You both glance at Hermes, who is currently trying to teach Dionysus's grapevines how to beatbox. "It's not going well." Apollo shrugs. "Maybe it only looked like chaos because I was expecting everything to follow my tune, my rhythm. But music doesn't work that way, not really." You smile. "Welcome to jazz theology." He chuckles. "The sound like sun-warmed honey. I used to think harmony was control, but maybe it's listening." He falls quiet. You hear it too, the shift. Somewhere in the distance the cows are humming again, low and resonant, not performing, just singing for themselves, for the earth. Maybe even for you. Hermes flops down beside you, breathless, twigs in his hair. I just convinced 3 dryads and a confused demigod to form a synth-pop trio, he grins. We're calling it Pasture Prime, you blink. That's actually clever, he winks. Don't sound so surprised. He stretches out on the grass, arms behind his head. You know, I didn't plan any of this. You snort. That's a lie. Okay, he admits. I didn't plan most of this. I just wanted to steal some cows and annoy my brother. Apollo rolls his eyes. But it turned into something more, Hermes continues. Not because I forced it, just because it wanted to happen. You lie back, watching the stars blink to life above Olympus. The constellations seem to pulse to a rhythm now, like they've been infected, no, inspired by the echo of cow-born melody. Hermes turns toward you. You think this'll last? You pause. The music? He nods. You look up. The music always lasts. Maybe not the show, not the fireworks, or the tambourines, but the feeling, the sound you can't unhear, that stays. Hermes is quiet for once, then he whispers, even if nobody writes it down. You smile. Especially then, because that's how myths survive, isn't it? Not in scrolls, in stories whispered before sleep, in lullabies sung without knowing their origin, in the space between chaos and harmony, where something unexpected finds its voice. The breeze stirs. Somewhere in the meadow below, UFO moo near. Gives a single soft moo. Hermes grins. That's the key of bovine minor. Apollo groans into his drink. The 3 of you lie there a while longer, letting the sounds of Olympus settle, letting the night play out the last few notes. There's nothing more to organize, nothing more to perform, just the comfort of having created something strange, beautiful, and inexplicably right. A song sung once and remembered forever. The stars are brighter than usual tonight, not because they're any closer, or because some god polished them, although Hermes has tried, but because the world has gone quiet enough to let them shine. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of echoes, full of what just happened. You're lying on the highest ridge of Olympus now, just beneath the old thundercloud balcony. The gods have drifted off, some to their temples, some to their beds, and some, like Dionysus, to a grape-fueled after-party that might still be happening in 3 centuries, but you stay. So does Apollo. So does Hermes, though he's currently using a scroll as a blanket and murmuring something about cow-driven tour carts. Euphromunia is curled nearby, chewing contentedly in her sleep. Her cowbell rings once every now and then, a tiny chime that keeps time with your breath. You look out over the world. You can see it now, not just Greece, but beyond. Villages, islands, deserts, mountains, all of it glowing faintly in moonlight, all of it a stage waiting for stories, waiting for a sound to reach it. Apollo speaks, voice low and softer than dusk. There are going to be songs about this. You glance at him. You mean you're going to write them? He smiles. No, they will. He gestures downward. The mortals. They'll remember, even if they don't know what they're remembering. Their tune, a rhythm, a strange little note that doesn't fit anywhere else but makes everything better. You nod. Like a moo in the middle of a symphony, he chuckles. Exactly. The wind picks up slightly, brushing your hair like fingers through pages. You can hear the faintest melody, a lullaby, wordless, just sound. And maybe that's all music ever was, someone humming into the dark, not to be heard, but to feel less alone. Hermes stirs beside you. He mumbles. If we ever do this again, you wait. We add pyrotechnic goats. You smile. Of course. The moon reaches its peak, the final curtain call of night. You sit up slowly, feeling the air change. The cows begin to hum again, all of them. Wherever they are, you can feel it. Like the low note of the world itself, a shared breath, a final chorus. Apollo rises beside you. No flourish, no spotlight. Just the quiet dignity of a god who has learned to listen. Hermes joins you both, stretching with a yawn so big it could wake a satyr. Then he grins. So, breakfast? Apollo sighs. If you say, Moosely, I'm leaving, you don't answer. You just watch the sky begin to brighten, not with fire. Not with glory, but with peace, and in that moment, you know. This was never a myth about music or cows or gods. It was a myth about moments, the small ones, the strange ones, the ones that hum at the edge of your dreams and ask you to remember them without needing to understand them. You close your eyes, let the music drift away. The last move fades like a whisper on the wind, and you sleep. Not because you're tired, but because the story is done. And now, it's time to dream.